Hey guys, Frosty Knives here, back with another book review. And tonight we're going to be reviewing a book that many of you have requested that I review. So up until this point, we have taken a long and adventurous look at many of the different books that Stephen King has written. We have gone over many of his bestsellers and many of his movies. But up until this point, we have not touched upon his darker half. So tonight, we are going to finally be taking a stroll into the world of Richard Bachman. Now, as many of you may have known, Stephen King published 5 books under the pseudonym of Richard Bachman before he was finally outed by a bookstore clerk. And the first 5 books came to be known as the Bachman Books. He wrote Rage, The Long Walk, The Running Man, Road Work, and Thinner. And that is what has came to be known as the Bachman Books. He wrote a few more under that pseudonym later on, but these were the first 5 that he published. And tonight, we're going to be taking a look at one of the Bachman books. Tonight, we are going to be discussing The Long Walk. Now, what I have here is I have a copy of the Bachman Books, 4 early novels by Stephen King, which is currently out of print. And then I have this copy of the Bachman Books, 4 early novels by Stephen King, which is also out of print. And the reason that both of these copies are out of print is because Stephen King let his story Rage go out of print. We'll get to that when we talk about Rage. So these 2 books, you're probably not going to find outside of a used bookshop, and you're not going to find them anywhere new. But today, we're not going to be talking about all of the Bachman books. We're just going to be talking about The Long Walk. Now, since these are compilations, I usually give you the rundown on the page count. I don't have a page count for how long The Long Walk actually was, but it was approximately about 300 pages. And a little backstory on The Long Walk. The Long Walk was published in, and I'm going to get some of these dates wrong, I'm sure. The Long Walk was published in 1979. The Long Walk was not the first novel, was not the first book that he would ever published. That was Carrie, but The Long Walk was actually the first novel that he wrote. And it wasn't published until later, and it was published after Carrie. But here, the nice thing about this collection of the Bachman books is that it has the original covers of the original book. So this is the original cover of The Long Walk. And it says, "In a future America, the marathon is the ultimate sports competition, a novel of chilling, macabre possibility." And so, The Long Walk is an interesting story. The Bachman books are interesting in and of themselves because, unlike the works of Stephen King, the Bachman books, with the exception of Thinner, don't deal with the supernatural. There are no supernatural elements in the Bachman books. They are hardcore, they're violent, they're gore-infested, but they're people and people. Not really any supernatural elements to the books, with the exception of Thinner, unlike Stephen King's other work. So this was a departure for Stephen King at the time, that he was writing in a genre that typically he was not writing in. So The Long Walk is literally about that. So it says in what I've read that this is a future America. I have different opinions on that. I actually think this is in a different universe altogether based on what I've read in the book. But in this America, and we don't know really much about the society, but in this America, there is a contest that is held annually, and it is called The Long Walk. And it's 100 walkers. They're all male, and they're all generally late teens, early 20s, and they enter this contest for the prize. And the prize is anything, whatever the winner wants for the rest of his life. That's the prize. And so they have to go on this long walk, and they have to maintain a speed of 4 miles an hour. If they drop below 4 miles an hour, they get a warning. And then after three warnings, three warnings that they get, it's three and you're out. And on the fourth, they get what is called a ticket. They get ticketed. And you don't find out until a little bit later in the book that that basically means they get shot in the head and killed. So the people who don't make it, this is literally a life and death walk. And the winner is the last man standing, the last person walking. So we have 100 kids, 100 people walking the long walk, maintaining a speed of 4 miles an hour, to see who's going to survive, to see who is going to be the last man standing. Every morning they get a little food pack, and they get a canteen of water whenever they want it, and they can bring anything they want on the walk, but they're not allowed to get anything from the bystanders and the people that are watching. And there are armed guards, like literally militiamen, riding on half tracks, following them, monitoring their progress all the way. And this is, based on what I've read, this is a national pastime. People bet on the long walk. People watch the long walk. It's televised. People bet on who they think is going to win. People bet on who they think is going to die. People collect souvenirs from the people that have died. Candy wrappers, discarded clothing, anything that they can get their hands on. So this is a big national pastime. People watch this. This is a sport. It's a violent sport, and it's sick and twisted. But in this, universe, in this world, this is what people watch. I didn't get the sense in the book that this was something that these people were forced to do. You aren't forced to go on the walk. You audition for it. There's a physical test and a mental test and a questionnaire, and you put your name in, and not everybody's picked. Out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that put their name in for the long walk, only 100 are picked, and then another 100 are picked as backups in case any of the first 100 don't decide to quit. And they're picked lottery style. So these 100 people get to go on this nice long walk, and they get the prize. The walk is brutal. So the whole story is told pretty much from the point of view of the main walker, whose name is Ray Garrity. And then there are other walkers around him that he becomes sort of friends with, and he gets to know, and you get to know other walkers but you're really focused on Ray, and it's really Ray's story. In the book, they walk for 5 days. They walk the walk ends on the 5th day. They start at the very top of Maine, on the Maine-Canadian border, and then they basically walk all the way through Maine into Augusta and into Freeport, past New Hampshire, through a little bit of New Hampshire, and finally into Massachusetts. So these people, these walkers, walk literally the entire state of Maine through New Hampshire, and the walk finally ends in Massachusetts. And the walk is overseen by this character called the Major. And you don't really know much about the Major. He's just the one that puts on the walk, and he's the one that shows up every now and then and shakes hands and gives them speeches, and he's the one that kicks off the walk, and he's the one that greets the winner. I have my ideas about some of this, where this story takes place, and we'll get there in a minute. But overall, that is really the gist of the book. You don't get to see any of the world. You don't know what kind of world they're living in. Some people might think it's a dystopian type of future, but we really don't know. We really don't know what kind of society Ray is living in. We really don't know the socio-political aspects of the world. We know there are things out in the world called squads, which people talk about getting squatted, and squads coming and taking people away who talk bad about the walk and who talk bad about the government. So we kind of get this idea that it is a militaristic type of government or world that they're living in, but we don't really know. The book is really just hyper-focused on the walk and the people in the walk. I would personally like to know more of the society that this is in, and why people would volunteer to do this. This is the The walk has been going on for something like 17, 20 years. So, sorry about that. But I'd like to know more about the society, because we really don't know about that. We really just know about the walk. And the walk itself is brutal. It is described in agonizing, brutal detail. And you watch as these kids go from being fresh-faced at the beginning of the walk to literally broken shells at the end. The walk, it physically destroys you, it mentally destroys you, it emotionally destroys you. You're not allowed to stop for anything. So people are literally sleeping while they're walking, they're shitting while they're walking, they're pissing while they're walking. You don't stop for anything. And you just see the physical and mental and emotional toil that this walk puts on people, and you begin to wonder, why are they doing it? And you begin to wonder, what is it about? Why are they doing that? And that's the big topic that the walkers ask themselves through all of the book. Why are we doing this? Why are you here? Why am I here? Why did we agree to do this? Because it's very much insinuated that this is not a mandatory thing that these walkers have to do. This is a voluntary thing that they're doing. They're signing up for it. They're voluntarily going on this walk. Why? For what? For the prize? It's insinuated in the book that not many people win. There haven't been a lot of winners of the walks, and most of the people who have won the walks haven't lived much longer than the end of the walk. So not many people got the prize, which is whatever you want for the rest of your life, because most people who win the walk die shortly thereafter, within days or weeks of winning, because of the toll that it took on their bodies and their minds and their spirits and their psyches. So why are they doing it? We don't know. It's just a long walk that they're going on to get this prize. And even the people that are walking in the book, they don't really know. And it's brutal. It is a brutal walk. The deaths are brutal. That is the one thing that Richard Bachman is good at. Richard Bachman is brutal. His stories tend to be brutal. They tend to be about brutal people doing brutal things to each other. They tend to be hardcore books as opposed to some of the supernatural elements in a King book. And I like that. I like that about Richard Bachman because it is brutal. It is balls to the wall. It is in your face. It is shocking. And that's interesting to read about. I liked the long walk. I still don't understand why they're doing it. But the kids in the book don't understand why they're doing it either. They just know that they're walking, and the book sort of borders on maybe some philosophical issues, spiritual issues. Why are we doing this? What does it mean? What does death mean? And what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be dead? How do you struggle with issues of life and death and this, that, and the other thing? I thought the book was very well constructed and very well done. It didn't feel like it dragged, and when it did drag, it was a walk, and you could really put yourself in the shoes of these kids that are just walking and walking and walking day and night for 5 days, over hill, over dale, through the rain and in the dark and in the heat and in the weather and all that. And you could really start to feel by the end of the book the toll that it took on it. And I can say that Ray Garrity, being the main walker, the main person that you read about, he is the one that wins the long walk. And for the first time in 17 years, they did walk all the way to Massachusetts. So he spent 5 days walking to Massachusetts. And he did win. And it's not clear whether or not he lives or dies at the end of the book, because at the end of the story, it's kind of obvious that Ray Garrity has gone slightly insane. You're not sure about his mental faculties, his mental state, because at the end of the book, he's seeing things. He's seeing figures that aren't there. And you get the sense that he cracked and that he's just gone. And he's lost it. So we're not really sure if he survives, if he claims the prize. But he's just another cog in a machine that gets ground up, chewed up, spit out, and he buys his ticket, you know? So, I mean, overall, I thought it was a pretty good read. It's not my favorite of the Bachman books. It's my second favorite of the Bachman books. My favorite of the Bachman books is Rage, and we'll get there. But as far as the Bachman books go, this is probably my second favorite, and it's a pretty good read. Now, I have as I mentioned earlier, I have some questions, and I have some ideas about where this book takes place. As we all know, everything sort of leads to the tower. Does everything lead to the tower? I don't know. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the world that Ray Garrity lives in, the world that is doing this annual long walk, I have a feeling that it may be on a certain level of the tower. On not in our level of the tower, but on another level of the tower. And the reason that I say that is twofold. Number one, the main character's full name is Raymond Davis Garrity, which, if you count that out, equals 19. There are 19 letters in Ray Garrity's name, which, as we all know, the number 19 is a mystical number of power in the world of the tower. And then the other thing that it mentions in the book, it talks about a retired general that stormed a German nuclear base in Santiago in 1953. Well, that never happened in our world. But that seems to me that in this world, perhaps World War II was going on longer through the 40s and maybe into the 50s. So in this world, history is a little different, which lends me to think that maybe also this is on another level of the tower. That's all supposition. That's all my thinking. I don't know if that's true or not. But as a story, the Long Walk is a really good story. And you get to you get to watch these kids as they break down, as they put a physical toll on their bodies, an mental toll on their minds. Their spirits are broken, their psyches are broken, and you just wonder why they're doing it. And you wonder why are they walking, all for this prize that nobody will ever seem to obtain because they all go crazy or they all die before they can get to it. So, what is the purpose of the Long Walk? We don't know, and they don't know in the stories. But they do it every year. They do it. And every year, 100 people go out. And every year, 100 people die. And it's something that happens annually. And maybe they're being forced to do it. And we just don't know this because we don't know much about the society. And maybe they're not. Maybe they're doing it voluntarily. Which brings up all kinds of questions about why would you do this voluntarily. I liked the camaraderie between the walkers. I like the interactions between the walkers. I like the dialogue between the walkers. I like the characters of the walkers that we get to see. They all have brutal deaths. It's not for the squeamish or the weak of heart, but it is a good story. And I did wind up giving it, on Goodreads, I did wind up giving it a 4 out of 5 because it's not my favorite of the Bachman books. But it is my second favorite. It is a good read. And I would recommend you to read it because I think it's just an overall good story. And we, like I said, we don't know why they're walking. But at the end of the day, they're walking and it doesn't really matter why. I don't know. I don't know if it does or not. So there you have my review of The Long Walk. And what I want to do is I want to read and review each of the Bachman books individually. So I want to review Rage and Roadwork and The Running Man individually as I read them. But I wanted to review The Long Walk first because a lot of you have been asking me to review The Long Walk. And so here it is. I highly recommend you go out and get a copy of it if you can. You're not going to get a copy of these books. You can't get a copy of the 4 Bachman books anymore because Rage went out of print. Right after the school shootings and Sandy Hook happened, Stephen King let Rage go out of print. So if you do find a copy of the Bachman books, just know that there's only going to be 3 of them in them now. You're going to find The Long Walk, Roadwork, and A Running Man if you find a collection. But you can also get the Bachman books individually. They have published The Long Walk Roadwork and The Running Man individually. So you can find them as individual novels now. And I highly recommend you go out and read them because I think they're really good. And you get to see a different side of King. You get to see the other side of King, the non-supernatural side of King. And there's a lot in the Bachman books that he does that are good, that are not your typical Stephen King fare, but are still good books, with the exception of Thinner. Thinner is my least favorite one, and I haven't read The Regulators in a long time. That's my review of The Long Walk by Richard Bachman, good old Tricky Dicky. And I hope you enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm going to be reading the other Bachman books and reviewing them. I'm also going to be reading and reviewing the new Stephen King novel, The Outsider, which I just picked up from the library. And I'm going to be reading that. Brand new Stephen King, just came out on Tuesday. So that's yesterday, so that's going to be exciting. So guys, I hope you enjoyed my review of The Long Walk. Pick up a copy, get it from your library, read it. It's a good read. It's a quick read. And as always, thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and I'll see you in the next video.